perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium.
Hi guys, welcome back. My name's Stan, and with my co-host and medium Christine. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, hope you are.
Nice to see you again. And I'm really excited tonight because we're going to speak about the world of UFOs, ufology and all the like, really. And we have the amazing Malcolm Robinson with us tonight. Thanks, Malcolm, for being here. This is amazing that you're here with us. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to come on your show tonight, Stan, and I'm sure we'll have a good hour or so talking about the weird and the wonderful, which I'm always happy to talk about.
Yes, wonderfully weird as well. So for our listeners who may not know much about you, because I know you do have quite an interesting kind of, I would say a career really in your interest. It'd be great to kind of know about you and also what got you interested in the world of UFOs.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in strange phenomena, Stan, ever since I was a small boy growing up in Scotland. I had this deep fascination for all things weird and wonderful. But I guess it really all started in primary school. We were given a book to read called The Man from Mars. And it was all about this Martian that landed in a wood. And these two guys, young schoolboys, had bunked off school and went into the woods and met this spaceman. And they went on these fantastic journeys. And for some reason, that captivated my young and inquiring mind. And as I grew older, I started to read books on ghosts and poltergeists, but these were kind of fictional books, like the Pan book of ghost stories. They were just made up stories. And I went, well, I really want to know what the truth is here. So I started to search for the proper books, the real books on UFOs. And I read the books of Eric Van Daniken, Jacques Vallée, and a whole range of fantastic authors from not only the UK, but the world over. But I was still undecided. I was very, very skeptical. I went, nah, there can't be such things as UFOs and ghosts and poltergeists. What a load of nonsense. You know what? I'm going to set out my stall and I'm going to try and disprove these subjects. So in 1979, I formed my own society entitled Strange Phenomena Investigations. And the aims of SPI are to collect, research and publish accounts relating to most aspects of strange phenomena and to purposely endeavour to try and come up with some answers. So I think you may know where I'm going with this story because I'm almost coming up to 50 years of research now. Am I a skeptic now? No, I'm not, because I've been in many haunted buildings. I've had my hair pulled by nothing. I've been slapped by nothing. I've seen some astonishing things we can speak about during the show if we have time. I'm still skeptical when it comes to talking to people and investigating. You've got to be, you've got to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure nobody is pulling the wool over your eyes. But coming up to 50 years of research, I'm convinced, totally convinced that we're dealing with some form of non-human intelligence that's always been with us. I'm talking UFOs here, of course. I'm also convinced of the continuity of the physical body after material death, that there is a place where each and every one of us will go. We'll see our mums, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, our aunties, our uncles. This didn't come lightly, Stan. This has been speaking to clinical doctors in hospitals. It's reading about near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, talking to doctors, nurses, because there's always an alternative. Is it oxygen starvation to the brain or is it something else? But for me, being a spiritualist, there is this life after death for absolutely sure. And it's a journey I'm still on. I write books, give lectures, and it's just lovely to come on a show such as yourself there, Stan, and just talk to your good self, Christine, and all your viewers and listeners.
It's great to have you here. And I can feel your excitement from here, actually. I feel like I have a fellow excitee, basically. So one question that kind of comes to mind, thinking about the UFO phenomenon and the spiritualist phenomenon, do you think that they could be linked in any way or form?
Well, it's a question I've been asked on several occasions. Is there an overlap? Is it one big umbrella where all this paranormal phenomena is somehow interlinked? And I can only, and I've said it before in other shows, I can only really talk about one case where that's happened to me in the personal revelations. SPI were dealing with a case in Devon in England, and it was a case where a lot of UFO activity was occurring above this house in Devon. And I went in there with my colleagues and we were interviewing the lady, and she was very, very sensible, very frightening with what's been going on. And then she started to talk to me, and then she stopped, and I went, no, keep going. Anything you say is important. I need to know. Oh, you'll laugh at me. I says, I won't laugh, just tell me. And what she said, Stan, was that she saw a small grey being. We call them the Greys. It's been seen in association with UFOs. Small, 3.5 foot tall, childlike body, large pear-shaped head, black inky almond-shaped eyes, grey, bluey, translucent skin, standing at the foot of her bed. But here's the rub. Here's where possibly this crossover, as you mentioned, comes in. Because to the right-hand side of the bed, she saw a ghostly child. And she described this ghostly child very, very similar to those little girls in a TV show called Little House on the Prairie, where they wear the pinafores and they've got the ringlets in their hair. So here we have a small grey standing on one side of the bed and a ghostly girl on the other. And that's the only case that I personally have investigated. There are cases the world over where this interlink between ufology and the spiritualist aspect and ghosts do fall in together. But that's the only case for me. And it makes me wonder, what is the mechanism? What constitutes this mechanism where that happens? And I've said before that the more psychically attuned, the more psychically aware somebody is, they'll see that. Like dogs and cats can hear and see different vibrations from humans. And I've often said it's like the old radios before the new DAB radios. The old radios with a dial, you turn the dial to go from BBC Radio 1 to BBC Radio 2. In between those radio stations, you've got frequencies it's trying to find, and it's the same with psychics, it's the same with mediums, that the more aware you are, you will pick up certain things. And that's why the mediums in Great Britain and the world over, they must be thanked for the wonderful work that they do. Yes, there's one or two charlatans out there. Yes, there's one or two people out to pull the wool over your eyes. But once you get rid of those people, some amazing spiritual people, even healers like the great Harry Edwards, this wonderful man in England, cured a lot of people. But if I was pushed to say what really is in my heart, is it going to be the paranormal, spiritualism, or UFOs? I would need to lean probably more towards the paranormal and spirituality. UFOs have played a big, big part in my life, and some of the stories I'll relate as we go through the show will prove that.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I kind of wonder, like, we're kind of forming this link between spiritualism and UFOs, essentially like being attuned to a new radio signal. And I know it's like mediums, like speaking to Christine and many other of our medium friends, like we've noticed a resurgence of people just waking up all over the world, and people are going through their own processes, but ultimately seems to fall down to the fact that they've been awakened to a new perception of reality and they're seeing things more. I wonder, like, does that align with the increase in UFO sightings that I've noticed recently?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's more people are becoming aware of UFOs and spirituality simply because of the wealth of the independent television stations that's coming on Sky Television, Blaze, etc. We have all these independent, and I've worked with a good number of them over the years. Whereas when I was a lad back in Scotland, you only had about 2 or 3 television stations, and when you ever got a program on UFOs, it was, well, one-sided, skeptical. Now people are portraying the subject in a balanced view, and you're getting more and more younger people starting to look, what is going on here? They're not always trusting of the newspapers and the governments of this world. They want to know for sure themselves. And that's why we always love to hear from youngsters and encourage them to get into the subject, but also to tell them to be very, very careful, because they are a nasty side to spirits, etc. You do get nasty poltergeists, and I won't shy away from that. The Socky poltergeist, the Enfield poltergeist, And moreover, the South Shields poltergeist, some very, very nasty things happened in those locations. So there is a good side to it as well, but there is this demonic aspect of spirituality that we have to be careful of. There's no good without bad. There's no light without dark. And I know that sounds cliche, but in my research, I have found, yes, we have to be careful.
Is there one particular instance where you think, okay, that was the first time I saw a UFO or the first time I met an entity? Is there one in particular that you've experienced firsthand?
Well, that's the beauty of this. Because I put myself in the very ballpark of where these things happen, you do tend, not always, but you do tend to experience these things. And probably the first thing that I experienced UFO-wise was when I was about 11 or 12 years of age. And that was in Scotland, and we were playing football in a school playing field. And I was just a young boy. I didn't know nothing about UFOs. A warm, sunny day, a rarity in Scotland, but it did happen that day. And we were playing a kickabout, playing football, and somebody shouted, "Whoa, what's that?" And we all looked up, and it was like an egg on its side, an egg shape, not standing up, but on its side. And even then, we were young enough to know that this wasn't an aircraft, that this wasn't a helicopter. And then after a few moments, my friends started kicking the ball about, apart from me. I'm still mesmerised by this. I'm wondering, what is it? And then I took my gaze away from it from a few seconds, looked up, and it was gone, typical. And over the years, I've spent many, many nights in haunted houses. I've seen some incredible stuff. Some people may already know these stories, but probably for me personally, the biggest thing, the most amazing thing that I have ever seen in my life, and how I wish you, Stan, and Christine, your colleague, had been there with me. Here is what happened. I was living in London at the time, and I was invited to go to this house in the outskirts of London because the strange things started to happen. So, long story short, I went along to this house, met the lady of the house, and she invited me upstairs, and we went into one of the back bedrooms, and there was a small glass cabinet, and about so high, with rings on the glass part of the cabinet and coins. I says, "Well, what's that? What are they?" They had little tags on it. "Oh, these are apports, Malcolm. These are..." Now, for those who don't know, an apport could be a coin, a medal, a ring, or something. It falls in. Just falls into the seance room or a haunted house, and you pick it up, and it's quite hot. It sounds preposterous. It sounds crazy. But there's so many instances of this, not just in the UK, but the world over. So that was interesting. She then took me into the other bedroom, and all it had was a small chest of drawers, a long, slim wardrobe with a red light on top of it, and in the corner of the room was a black curtain. As the corners meet, it was a curtain from one side to the other. And behind it was a chair. And I says, well, what's going on here? "Oh, we will have a psychic medium who's going to come in, sit in the chair, and he's going to go into trance, and strange things will happen." I went, wow, this is good. And so this man dutifully arrived about half an hour later. I padded him down to make sure he was not secreting any hidden devices, tape recorders, telescopic rods, or anything like that. I knocked on the walls of the rooms to make sure there were no hidden cavities in the room, and also the floor, any recording equipment, nothing. I was convinced and happy that everything in that room was as it should be. I was sitting facing this curtain with three other researchers, just facing this. And then the lady of the house turned the light off. Now your eyes got adjusted to the semi-darkness because there was this red ambient light on top of this slim wardrobe, which cast a soft ambient red glow throughout the room. So your eyes got adjusted to see who was sitting there. You could see the black cloth. And the lady of the house put on old English songs like Roll Out the Barrel, just to create that atmosphere, to create the musical atmosphere for spirit to happen. So what happened next, and it'll come over as a story, but I saw this. What happened next was a face moulded into the very fabric of this curtain and pushed out a few centimetres. You could see it blending in with the nose. It was horrible. And I'm thinking to myself, is this man doing this himself? But he had taken his shoes off and you could still see his white socks on the floor. And then at that point, there was this small chest of drawers which started to move. But prior to that, there were voices, spirit voices, male and female, coming up above your head, under your chin, next to your ear, all over. And I'm thinking, who's throwing their voice? Even though I believe in this, I'm still looking for logical answers. Who's throwing their voice? But my mates were still intrigued and mystified as I was. And there was these small little bells about so high, tacked onto the wall of this bedroom, and they started to tinkle away. Nobody was near them. And this small chest of drawers that was in the room started to vibrate. And it slowly rose up into the air, touched the ceiling, came across the ceiling and slowly dropped and hit my toes. I was astonished. I could not believe, how is this possible? And at this, and it sounds funny, but I can only tell the truth. I can only tell you what happens. A spirit voice boomed out in the room. Was Mr. Robinson impressed by this? And I said, I'd be more impressed if you took it back. We shall see what we can do, said the spirit voice. So I did the cardinal sin. I did something that no researcher should ever do, and that's try and stop psychic phenomena happening. Well, I did. I should never have done it, but I did. What I did was I hooked my finger under the lip of the small 3-tiered chest of drawers and said to myself, you're going nowhere. You are going nowhere. Okay, take it away. Take it away. 1 minute went by, nothing. See, nothing's happening. 2 minutes, nothing. What? And I started to feel a pressure on my finger, and then nobody was near me, Stan. My friends were there. There were nobody to my right, only to my left, and nobody was there. I could see. And I was trying to pull this chest of drawers back, and I couldn't. It was like a hot knife through butter. Suddenly, this chest of drawers left my finger, rose up into the air, slowly transpired across the bedroom ceiling, and slowly and gingerly went back to where it was. And at that point, a terrific burst of cold wind pervaded the whole room. It was, if you can imagine, you're lying, with your swimwear in a beach in Barbados, you're hot. And then suddenly a big hand comes out the sky and throws you into one of these industrial freezers with the hooks of meat. That's how cold it got. Your breath was frosting up. I could see my breath freezing up in the air. I saw this. Yes, it's a good story. Does anybody believe me? I don't have any proof. And the reason I don't have any proof for this story that I did see, because the lady of the house says, no, you can't use infrared cameras. No, you can't use video recorder. No, you can't use audio record. Why? Because it will disrupt the psychic phenomena from happening. Some would say, well, maybe that's true. Maybe that is the case. But how I wish maybe I had a little buttonhole camera. But again, that's naughty. And filmed the proceedings of that night, because then I would have something to show Joe Public. But as I've said on many shows in the past, Stan, that we are living in the Steven Spielberg age, a DreamWorks laboratory, where anything can be manipulated onto a computer to look like a ghost, to look like a UFO. We have now AI technology coming with some tremendous photographs, manipulation. Thankfully, the same AI technology can unmask if it's a fake UFO hanging from a tree with a thin, wire, or a fake ghost photograph, etc. So the technology works both ways. But it's been so interesting. I've got so many more stories I could tell you because I've had almost 50 years of this,
Gosh, I feel like I'm only just getting started with this stuff, and I know Christine's seen some pretty amazing things as well. So
yeah, I just want to say, God, how did you feel after you'd witnessed that? Did you kind of have to pinch someone, say, I've just seen the most amazing phenomena?
Yes, bro, I did point of fact, because you don't expect to see that every day of the week, And I was questioning everything. Where's this wind coming from? Has somebody got a big fan and blowing cold air into the room? Where does his face mould into the fabric of this curtain? How on earth did that chest of drawers rise up into the air? I did not see any strings or pulleys or anything. And it's great because that lady who told me about this story, who got me involved in this, came to my meetings in London. And that's the beauty of this, Christine, is when I give lectures, people come up to me at the end of the lecture and say, Mr. Robinson, I've never told my husband about this, but I'm going to tell you. And they start to unload all these wonderful stories, whereas previously they would have kept them hidden because they don't know who to go to, And I'm not an expert, but I'm very intrigued by this.
What you're saying there, when you talked about the apports, I witnessed an apport once, and it literally fell from out of nowhere in front of me and somebody else. And it was like, wow, that is precious to actually witness something like that. Nothing like you did, but yeah, I've seen an apport. Fantastic.
Yeah, and also when we were investigating the Nottingham Halls of Justice some years ago with Paraforce, with Vivian Powell and Sean Cadman and members of their team, there meant to be a kind of poltergeist in the dungeons below the Nottingham Halls of Justice, and it's a stone-thrown poltergeist. And me and a colleague, David Young, we were walking back to go upstairs. The upstairs actually leads you right into the courtroom, one of the courtrooms. And as we were ascending the stairs, a clattered behind us on the flagstones, and I went, what's that? So we had the torches, we're in darkness, and we saw this stone still spinning on this flagstone, and I went to pick it up, and it was boiling hot. I could not believe it. So it was privileged. We were privileged to see something like that and experience something like that. But it is a rare thing. But these stone-thrown poltergeists have been cited and been noted through many cases in England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland.
Do you think they're just trying to get your attention?
It's a possibility. There are other ways you could do it, of course. I mean, as I said earlier, I've been slapped and had my hair pulled. But I guess that that's one way where some demonic spirit or spirit entity is trying to get your attention. And we have to bear in mind, Christine, and I'm sure you'll agree, that a number of these spirits are earthbound spirits who can't understand the fact that they've passed on. And so they tend to stay around the earth plane, places that they loved and they lived, and they don't know how to get to the other side. It sounds, Hollywood, but in the years of my research, they need help. And our society have helped many a spirit move on to the other side, and it's just part of the work we do.
Fascinating, absolutely.
Yeah, so I had a similar experience myself a few years ago, and I kind of wonder what you think about this, Malcolm. Excuse me. I went to my first ghost investigation at Oxford Castle years ago. It's when I met Christine in person for the first time, actually. And it's a shame you weren't in the same group as us, because I saw something really bizarre downstairs in the crypt. So I don't know if you've been to Oxford Castle before, but it's a beautiful building. It's not a big castle because half of it's been converted to a hotel. It's very kind of ritzy, but the old part has been kept as close as it could be to the original state. And we were downstairs in the catacombs, and the catacombs itself isn't exactly a humongous room. Has quite a low ceiling with archways and pillars in between. And it was the first time I tried table tipping for the first time. I thought, well, I kind of always had this impression, like maybe it's from my days watching Most Haunted, though, so I was a bit iffy about whether that was real or not, though, but it's more entertainment, maybe. But I thought, well, it's clearly maybe showmanship. Like there could be so many different ways where people could fake movement. And luckily, they actually gave me the table to carry down, and I examined it myself. I checked underneath it. It was just a standard little fold-away wooden table, nothing really, that big. I put it on the ground at the base of the catacombs, and there was 3 of us there. 4 of us, me including, and 3 others. So I set up the experiment myself so I could at least think, okay, well, if I could move every possible variable out the way and reduce that questioning, maybe this could be a real experience if something does happen, though. But I didn't really have high hopes. So yeah, we stood by each side of the table, placed our hands on top, but facing upwards, so it's harder for you to put pressure on. the feet were away from the table, though. It's not standing directly underneath, though, just away from the legs. And it was on quite relatively flat ground. You could maybe move it a tiny, tiny bit, though, because it's never quite perfect. And so, yeah, I was a bit shy at the time, though, so somebody else started to speak out, ask questions and do that. And I was just observing, just, again, not expecting anything. And suddenly the table started to vibrate a bit. And I thought, oh, maybe someone nudged it a bit. And then it vibrated again. Then my hands started to get quite hot, like I had, get pins and needles kind of thing. When you kind of lose that sensation in your hand, but I could still feel, but it was a really weird feeling. And it started to rock backwards, forwards. And I was getting a little bit freaked out at that point. I thought, okay, well, Stan, just calm down. It's okay. It's fine. Then it began to move more violently, like jolting backwards and forwards. And what I saw was, to its highest point, it leant backwards and ever so slightly kind of rotated, then rotated more, and then levitated off the ground ever so slightly, about a couple of 2-3 centimeters, I would say. And I knew it was that way because, of course, it was a dark room, but a light was placed behind it, and I could see the shadow emitting from where the table leg, and that separated for a moment and then went down. And it went down with a clump. And we all jumped back, and we felt like the room was full of electricity. It's like a wind was rushing through. It was like the most bizarre experience I've ever seen. I didn't, at that point, feel fearful. It was more, I was full of adrenaline then. I was like, okay, come on. I'll take on anything at this point. And I still can't explain to this day. And a member of the group did record it, but of course they don't want to share the video, which, I respect that. That's fine though. But I was there as a first-hand witness. Still to this day, I can't explain it. I did remove as many variables as I could think of. Have you ever seen that before yourself? And what do you think that might have been?
Oh, I've seen table tilting many, many times, for sure. Just before I give you a for instance, did you see your hands were palm up on the table? So your hands were like that, yeah?
This way, yes.
The back of your hand is on the table. Well, I'm glad you did that, because obviously that's just another way to try and see if spirit phenomena can manipulate your hands, even though you've not got your fingers on it. Very interesting. The first time I tried table tipping was in Scotland with a friend, and there was 2 or 3 of us round the table, and nothing happened for a good 20, 25 minutes or so. And then this table rose up like that, and this was a heavy table. And we said, okay, we know you're there, take the table back down. Now, when the table got to about there, the gravity, because our fingers were not underneath it, the gravity of this heavy table should have collapsed the table, should have just forced the table back thunderously on the floor. It gently went down as if some invisible hands were just gently lowering it back to the floor.
Mm.
That same night, that table was all over the place. It was moving around, so much so that myself and my colleagues had to rise up off our chairs, and the table wobbled out the living room. I swear to God, it wobbled out the living room and into the hallway. Absolutely astonishing. Even then, I was looking to see if everybody's fingers were on top of the table and not obviously underneath. And because even though people can press down with their fingers, that is still manipulation. We have to be very careful of that. But the people I was using that night, they were not out to deceive anybody. I'm absolutely convinced of this. So the bottom line for that story was that, yes, I do believe that some form of spirit presence was there in that room that night, using us and our energy, for want of a better word, and manipulating this table to answer questions and stuff. Of course, that would take... We can look at the other side of the coin on that one. We could talk about Ouija boards, which is people use to get answers. And that's a very, very, very dangerous tool. And I don't advocate anybody using Ouija boards, because they are getting through to other kind of type of spirits who will not tell the truth. They masquerade as your Auntie Agnes or your Uncle Harry. They'll give you false stuff. And so we have to be very, very careful. I'm not saying we shouldn't use it per se, but at least be very careful and open up with a heavenly prayer with your good intentions of what you're trying to do, yeah.
It seems like these kind of events seem to respond to vibration, and there's a thing we always talk about intent. So if we ever go on an investigation of sort, make sure you head into it with good intent. You're not going there for entertainment. You're not going in there to antagonize anything.
Yeah.
Usually you'll get positive results most of the time. And it seems to be the same with seeing the lights in the sky. And I've recently begun to see a few things myself as well, and I need to kind of report these instances. But I've seen I think it was only about a couple of weeks ago I saw a light brighter than all the stars in the sky, and I thought, well, maybe it's a comet or maybe it's just a planet a bit brighter that night. But I saw it very slowly move through the sky and then rapidly increase in speed, and then just switch off as if like a light bulb was turned off. And I thought, okay, well, what am I seeing here? What am I experiencing here? Okay, there was no noise. It was rapidly accelerating. It was very, very bright, much brighter than the brightest star I could see that night. There were no, when you see planes and drones, there'll be additional lights to indicate left and right, and obviously the wing area and stuff like that. Okay, so I didn't see that. And what happened was, as it disappeared, I saw like a strange distortion in the sky. Like, obviously my night vision isn't great. I'm only human though, but I could see just enough of a distortion. Like there's a big bubble like next to it, and as it just disappeared. And I thought, well, you get eye floaters sometimes. I thought, well, maybe it could have been just something in my eye for that moment. That's a possibility. Then I saw like another one. I thought, okay, something's going on here. It was like a few blobs in the sky, then it went. And even like a few weeks before that, okay, this is a ridiculous story though. It does make me laugh. I have a story to do with Russell Brand and a UFO, a potential UFO.
Okay.
I went out with the family one evening to this circus that was being run by this. I think there's this famous clown who was associated with this kind of big circus chain, which I can't really mention here anyway. He was doing like a few test shows in the countryside and not too far from where I live. And we headed off there to go and watch, and night was going great. And then suddenly somebody walked into the tent, and I thought, recognise that guy. And they turned around. It was Russell Brand. And I was going to say Russell Crowe then, sorry, Russell Brand. And I thought, okay, is it like an imitator? Is it a lookalike? No, it was actually him. And he was there with his family, and I get quite shy around famous people. I don't find it quite, And I thought, okay, I'll leave him do his thing. He's having his evening, he's enjoying himself. And I thought, okay, this is just weird in itself. So yeah, we just obviously finished the night, had a great time. And as we headed out, just around the corner from where the tent was based, the sun was still up, but beginning to set. We're making our way along the countryside, and just over this fence, and amongst these trees, was a large shaft of metal. It was almost like a very elongated diamond shape, basically. And at first I thought, well, maybe it was a piece of debris hanging from an overhanging power cable or some line, or maybe on a tree. But no, it was above the tree. Nothing was suspending it in the air. It was just there. And I thought, okay, maybe it's a reflection on the window. But as we traveled closer and moved around it, I could see it was a 3D object, and I could see the light moving across it. No noise, no emissions that I could see. Because usually something that big, you think it would be quite heavy though, so it would need some sort of propulsion to hold it up. But no, it was just sat there completely and utterly motionless. As I went along, I looked again, then I think it disappeared. I don't know if it just disappeared behind the tree line. But either way, the first time I saw it was about between 5 and 10 seconds roughly as we went around. Just long enough just for me to just think, actually, there's something more to this. And like I say, it wasn't suspended by a tree. It was like just above it, enough of a distance away. So that one night seems a bit weird. Russell Brand and a potential UFO. So there we go.
So this thing...
Thanks, Russell.
This thing that was above the tree, you described it like a rod-like thing or something, was it?
It's like not quite like a rod. It's like I say, it's like a diamond. Imagine like a diamond shape like this, basically, but imagine it elongated, so it's quite long and thin, almost like a spear.
Yeah.
Imagine that way. It's but very reflective, like very beautifully like sheen. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke anything in particular. I was very much compos mentis, so as much as I can be. Yeah, that's a weird one. I can't explain. I mean, there may be natural based on our current understanding of science, explanation of it. But to me, something doesn't seem right about it in my gut. As in, like, as you may not know, I'm a medium as well, but I've got the instinct for it. Something seemed otherworldly about it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very peculiar, that one, and meeting Russell Brand and the two other UFOs before that same night. That must have been some night for sure.
Maybe he was the alien. Maybe came in a different form. That was a disguise. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our job as a society is to find out what is in the skies. And with any given sighting, we always check with the airports, the national airports, the provincial airports, local flying clubs. We check with the Ministry of Defence to see if there were any air exercises on the go. We dot the I's and cross the T's effectively to try and find out if there's anything that normally or should have been in the sky at that time. And when you've exhausted all that, what are you left with? You're left with a witness testimony, or some cases photographic evidence and stuff. So it's our job and the job of SPI just to find out, what is in the skies. And when we do sky watching at various locations in Scotland, it's a great opportunity for the youngsters who come along just to explain, well, that's that bright object in the sky. That's Mars. That's Venus. What's that light? That's a small satellite traversing the night sky. And when I was a small boy, I used to think they were UFOs, but I now know better. They're just a satellite, And so it's an opportunity for us to educate the youngsters who come to our group and want to find out more. And that's the beauty of the subject. People are still warming to it. Young people are getting more and more intrigued by these mysteries, and I was the very same. When I started, there were hardly anybody looking at this in Scotland. You did have the Scottish Society for Psychical Research, but other than them, there were no smaller independent groups. And I formed SPI with Ron Halliday, who I'm co-writing a book about Scottish UFO sightings above Bonnybridge. It should be out later this year. We have a lovely team of Billy Devlin. We have other chaps within the confines of SPI as well. And we have a fantastic medium called Stephen Bird. Wow, he's a fantastic medium. And some of the stuff that he's seen and explained to us over the years has been spectacular. So we've got a nice team, with Ron, Billy, and just to find out what's going on. Great.
Yeah. No, I love the fact that you say, I don't want to call them youngsters because it makes me feel old, though, but I'm kind of getting old now. But more people are getting more excited about the world because it's what this whole podcast is about. It's about the pursuit of the unknown. It's normalizing the paranormal because for so many years, like hundreds of years ago, like you mentioned, you would have got burnt at the stake for even questioning these things or exhibiting kind of advanced abilities. But now conversation is much more normalized. You can survive a conversation, but you can also incite kind of others to learn from what you say. But yeah, thanks to the advent of technology, we can share information more freely, and we have an additional source outside of the mainstream media to have that open discourse that's not influenced by people who pay more money ultimately. I think that's what's so wonderful about all this, though. So, we're all about information being available for everybody. So everyone's welcome on this podcast to share their experiences, to share their perceptions. We may not agree with each other sometimes. We have different points of view, but the whole point is it's okay to disagree, provide another alternative, because there's always something we can offer each other. So that's what's so wonderful about having these experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with you, Stan, that, information is for sharing, and the advent of technology with the internet and Facebook and that, we can share these things immediately, but again, we have to be careful. Nobody's muddying the waters with false information and false images, of course. But it's a fantastic tool to get these findings out to Australia or any part of the world instantaneous. You mentioned being burned at the stake. Probably I would have been burned at the stake if I had lived in the 15th, 16th century, but yeah, I've said it many times before. Let's be honest about this. We laughed at Marconi. That'll never work. We laughed at John Logie Baird, the inventor of the television. That'll never work. We laughed at the Wright brothers, man's first flight at Kitty Hawk. It'll never get off the ground. Oh, it did. People tend to poke fun and laugh at these adventurers and mystics and psychics of this world, and they shouldn't really, because we're learning. We are at the bottom rung of a very long ladder of understanding. We're only halfway up this ladder. There's so many more mysteries to be solved within the confines of this planet. And goodness knows what we'll find when we get into outer space as well. But that'll be centuries on, I guess,
Yeah, I feel like at the moment we're on the cusp of potentially a new age, and maybe that's my naivety at my age, but I've had this feeling for much of my life, like I mentioned to you, previously in our earlier conversations, that much of my life I felt like the technology we have and the world that we live in, there's a world behind all this. I feel like what we've been given as an everyday access is just what we've been given. I feel like there's something more, and there's something more out there. And as time has gone by, I've kind of followed this whole disclosure movement that's kind of happening right now. And I will say right now, it's been happening for some time though, but at the moment it seems to be really kind of heating heating up quite a lot, actually. But I'd like to kind of get your view on that, if that's okay, because I've seen a few people at the moment saying, okay, well, this government body may be considering disclosing this amount of information. Okay, well, these guys aren't doing it fast enough, and we don't trust these guys. We're going to also, as our own, our own individual entity, release our information and so on. So there seems to be a lot between, I don't know if you know, like Dr. Stephen Greer, was it Lou Elizondo? There's all these different representatives, and also the Pentagon itself. I think a few days ago, was it something Luna? So it was Luna making an announcement that, okay, we're making this task force, and our task is to deal with various different bodies within the American institutions that have hidden information. And we're pretty much kind of holding them to the wall now and saying, okay, you have to give us this information now. And we're going to disclose the information that the world needs to know. And that relates to, I think, the JFK files and various other things. So at the moment, it seems very kind of almost kind of comic booky. And I don't mean to make fun of it by saying that, though, but it seems like it's almost like turned into like a sci-fi fantasy. Like, for anyone that follows any sci-fi kind of dramas, though, isn't this like their dream, really? Like, it's the thing people have been speaking about for so long. Literally, the government is speaking about it now. That's like, to me, it's wild, though. So what are your thoughts on disclosure at the moment, though? And do you think it is what they say it is?
Well, we've certainly came on leaps and bounds for the 40s and 50s in America, with Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, Project Sign, and the Robertson panel and a number of other studies initially back in the day in America. But these studies were to poo-poo the UFO sightings. It was a whitewash. Project Blue Book, a whitewash. So I'm probably like yourself, Stan. I'm so happy that America is now coming clean. Maybe they've been forced or backed into a corner to come clean, because Senator Harry Reid, when he found out that the Navy pilots on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the USS Princeton, and another ship had this gun camera clips of what they called gimbal, go fast, and tic-tac. That was how they described these fast-moving objects. And once he asked for the release of the footage, everybody wanted to know what's going on. So the government knew they were backed into a corner. And eventually the Pentagon themselves released some files. Over the years, in America, many pre-classified files have been declassified, which clearly show that the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA have been actively involved in UFO research. And the problem we have there is many of these documents are heavily blacked out, paragraph after paragraph. What is underneath those paragraphs? So I'm hopeful that the disclosure that's coming out over the past few years, and probably will continue, will prove intriguing. But where will that take us? Because we have to be very careful, and I've said it before, maybe these cover stories are for some new Earth-based technology. Maybe it's our own technology, because the stealth aircraft was flying in America for a number of years, and that gave rise to many false UFO reports. We have sophisticated drones flying about our airspace, some of which look very fanciful, and it could be misconstrued as a UFO. But when these pilots chased these objects, or tried to chase these objects, they got away from them so quick. And if this was an Earth-based pilot, the G-force involved with the speed and the turns of these objects would absolutely kill somebody, Is it the Chinese? Is it the Russians? Was it America themselves with a new technology, just trying to find out what their own Navy pilots and naval personnel would talk about by introducing this to their Navy war games, which was happening at the time? But I honestly believe that there's a lot of governments in this world know more than they're letting on. That's a fact. We know it through government files. I was a wee bit disappointed way back in 2001 in the press club in America. We had all these generals, we had Navy personnel, Air Force pilots with all the tunics. And I goes, here we go at last. These guys are going to talk about the UFOs that they've seen. They are not just men in the street. These are official people. And they talked about the Minuteman missiles being switched off, nuclear missiles being switched off because UFOs were seen above the silos. But it was just yesterday's news. Nothing else happened after the following day, way back in 2001. But since then, over the past few years, as you know, the Pentagon and even NASA, about 18 scientists and one astronaut was part of a NASA select committee looking into UFO sightings. So clearly there's something going on. And I just hope, fingers crossed, we may be close to some form of disclosure. But what will that comprise of? You know, is it something we should be fearful of? If we have any interactions, I'm just speculating here, with any non-human intelligence, what would that do to the world's economy? What would that do to the world's religion? Who would be the master race, so to speak? Would they help us or would they destroy us? Now, these are only speculations on my part, but we know what happened when man went over to Australia. They more or less ravaged the Aborigines. And when man went into the jungles of Ecuador and that, these tribes that were hidden in the jungles for years, they were terrified, and suddenly they're drinking Coca-Cola and they're wearing "I love the USA" t-shirts, you know. So we have to be careful, because mankind, what we have done to our fellow creatures, you know, what the American army did to the Navajo and the Cheyenne and the Arapaho Indians, that was their lands, and they took them right off, put them into reservations. So what I'm trying to say very badly is, if we are dealing with a non-human intelligence, will that be good for us? We don't know. We can only speculate.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what I can say is, considering they'd have to travel great distances, you need tremendously advanced technology to cover that time. Otherwise, obviously, they'll die before they even reach 1/10 of their journey. Considering that, you'd have immensely powerful weapons. If they were a danger, we wouldn't be here now. That's my theory. I could be wrong though. But yeah, but Christine, do you have any questions?
No, I was just going to say that when you talk about these great distances, I believe they're interdimensional. I believe that they don't travel thousands of miles. They're just in another dimension, that we can't see. And that's why when we do see them and they just disappear like that, they haven't gone anywhere. They've just Star Wars, Star Trek rather, they've cloaked or something like that. Yeah, and my other problem with disclosure is, what if the powers that be sell these non-human entities as being a threat when they're actually not? You know, because we were always told, we were always told, like the Red Indians, and forgive me for using that term, were savages and all the rest, and it's only now, So I'm a bit wary about anybody, getting involved and feeding us the wrong narrative about these people or these non-human entities. I'd love to.
I think you're on the right lines there, Christine. I do believe that there probably is a dimensional aspect to UFOs, that they're flitting in and out of our airspace. I mean, the famous Scottish case in Decmont Woods, where Robert Taylor saw that large dome-shaped craft that disappeared and blended in with the background and re-solidified again. And you're speaking about the vast distances. If we're dealing with a far superior technologically advanced race of beings, how are they getting here? Now, they may already have bases on this planet, under the oceans of this planet. That's a possibility. But they probably see us as insignificant. Some people have speculated that maybe they put us here. In other words, they seeded mankind. And what you're seeing just now, these abductions, they're somehow doing something to our very bodies to change us or manipulate us or something. There clearly is an agenda with UFO abductions, and it really frustrates me as to why, because I've said many times before, these UFO abductions have been going on for countless hundreds of years, and yet they're still doing the same thing. Why is that, Very bizarre. So there is an agenda there, but we don't truly know what that is.
I'm curious if it's part of this kind of dual narrative thing where, I mean, it's just a theory anyway. I can be proven wrong at any time. I'm always open to new information, but for me, it seems like it's part of this fear narrative where in the past, we call them the Dark Ages because, a long time ago, it was literally the Dark Ages, dark in terms of lack of enlightenment and the awareness of the world and our situation within it. So back then we used to turn to religion. We had different forms of religions which explained the world to us, that gave us some sort of measure. So a measure for morality, measure for understanding of nature and our place in it, and just ultimately it's a cage that we've chosen to put ourselves into. But that was the way it was back then. I'm not judging whether that's right or wrong. But nowadays, people now have access to more and more information. So, for example, myself, I used to be a Catholic growing up. I experienced an out-of-body experience and a number of other things that completely blew my mind open. I left that because I began to be aware of there being so much more, and now I am what I am now, a spiritualist of sorts. I don't know what I am really, but now there seems to be less control because more people are stepping away from these different beliefs, cultural different things, and exploring more. So now this information about this whole disclosure thing, which is obviously we're discussing just then, is happening. The fear control is now going. So as essentially the bull is being let out of the gate, are they steering the direction of the bull? Okay, we need to find a new way to control people, though. So let's promote this fear narrative through, it could be through films, the media, different media, talk about the news channels, TV shows, even merchandise. I love Independence Day, great film though, but maybe that's part of the fear narrative. Or is it the other way, basically? Okay, so the bull's been let out the gate. Okay, let's do this safely and decently. Okay, if we're now getting into contact with these extraterrestrial beings or whatever you call them, let's tell them we're safe. There could be a reason why they're shutting down different nuclear structures and devices, though, because they might be afraid for us. Because we're getting so advanced now, we're beginning to venture into the next frontier, as they say in Star Trek. They need to make sure that we leave the planet in a safe way, that we're not barbarians heading into space to affect other people. So they may be advanced, but they're not so they're not so perfect that they can't be in danger from us. So, like I say, there could be two potential narratives that we're trying to kind of deal with here. But if we enter like a new dark age of being told to be fearful of something that could actually enlighten us, then we're going back to the days of being controlled again. So yeah, just a theory anyway.
I think you raised some very, very valuable points here, Stan, for sure. The fear narrative would probably come from the media. Nobody should always believe what they read in newspapers or television. Sometimes it's a watered down version or it's their version, so the masses can control or the media can control the masses to a certain degree for sure. The fear factor is something, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're also right that maybe they've got our best interests in heart. In other words, that they are very concerned about our nuclear capabilities. We're raping the planet, we're deforestation, the nuclear capabilities, what's happening in Korea, North Korea, and also the Ukraine and various other conflicts throughout our world. It's absolutely terrifying. It's very, very sad. I try to steer away from the news these days because it is quite depressing, to be honest with you. I know it's...
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Of that, So maybe these aliens, for want of a better word, have our best, and I would like to think that they have our best interests in heart. So I would, even though I've been dealing with this all my life, as has my colleagues here in the UK and the world over, I don't think anybody truly has a definitive answer as to what is behind the UFO mystery. The only definitive answer I have in my research is regards to life after death and spirituality. That is not even a belief. It's not even a conviction. It's a knowledge through research and speaking to people who were really looking terrified and looking for answers and wondering why this happens to them, And then we have to think about our dreams, etc. Somebody was speaking to me the other day. They said, when we all dream, the people we see in our dreams, are they other dreamers dreaming and they're in this landscape as well? Is that one of these astral realms where we go to and we can manipulate? And it's very funny because when we go to sleep of a night, we have a director and a producer in our head relaying all that day's events or past day's events and constructing it into a narrative and a visual field of play where it's pure escapism, So I don't know if, to answer that gentleman's question the other day, I couldn't have an answer. He was asking if that is another part of the spirit realms in our dreams. Yes, so, to some degree, we can see people who've passed before us and meet them in the spirit world. We know that does happen. But the spiritual tapestry of these dreams Is that part of one of the stages of the afterlife, or is it just your mind scrambling all the noise from a day's events? It's very interesting.
I think when we're in the physical body, we can't understand truly the nature of consciousness. And everything you've just said, I just think there's levels and levels of consciousness. I'm really interested in why some people, you alluded to it earlier, some people see UFOs and others don't. Some people see ghosts and others don't. And I do think that it is more and more the older I get, I think it's how open your mind is. And if you've got a psychic ability, you're more likely to witness stuff. Certainly, it has been in my case. So yeah, really interesting. I think it's about levels of consciousness, but that's just a theory. I could be wrong, of
No,
course.
this is why we love these shows, to expand our
Absolutely.
knowledge and share stories and just learn from one another, because not everybody has the full secrets. We're all learning from each other.
One thing I wanted to say, I've often wondered whether what we call aliens are actually our future self. And that's where we're going to, are they time travelers? Is that how we're going to evolve? Because physically we're evolving all the time. In millennia, are we all going to look like little grey aliens? I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's part of what people have been speaking to people about this, and again, it's pure speculation. They're saying that perhaps
Absolutely,
these abductions and what they're doing to us is, as you said, Christine, to somehow for us to gingerly and evolve into something similar akin to them. Why they would want to do that is, again, open to question. I mentioned the other night there about this lady who was an abductee, and she was taken on board this craft, and she saw this other alien being there, and she was shown this hideous half human, half alien hybrid child, and she was told telepathically that belongs to you. So it's getting back to your question, Christine, about this hybridization, if that is what it's all about. Are they taking eggs from females and sperm from males to create this hybrid child? And if so, what is it all about? People speculate and say it's like, they're trying to repopulate a dying planet. It sounds crazy. It sounds Star Trek, and, we don't know. But clearly there is a program, as I've said many times, there's a program that we need to know what's going on. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You also mentioned, Christina, about could they possibly be time travelers coming back? So what we're seeing is time travelers, but that opens up another can of worms, obviously.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, that is fascinating. I've got one last thing I was going to ask as well, so I don't want to take too much of your time though. But this conversation is absolutely amazing, so thank you so much so far. But yeah, I've also another theory. I mean, I have links to Freemasonry anyway, so I'm not really part of it now in any way though. But at least I feel like I know what it is from the inside anyway. Let's just say. So yeah, funny enough, they're not to my knowledge, not the Illuminati. They're just an old men's club, but basically part of the agreement is like with each degree that you go through, you're given a bit of information, and I can't say what I learned anyway, just out of respect for them anyway. But it's nothing substantial. But everything around that alludes to something that I've theorized. And I don't know if you know that the Freemasons used to be the Knights Templar a long time ago. So the Knights Templar a long time ago were originally hired to protect travellers on their journey to Jerusalem, and they kind of were kind of warrior monks back in the day, and they work for the church, for better or for worse, on various crusades to spread the message, to protect, and so on. And it got to a point where they grew so powerful that they were being involved in the most secretive of projects, and something happens at some point in history, and they discover something that the church didn't like. And I believe this alludes to the Book of Enoch. Have you read the Book of Enoch by any chance, or parts of it? So apparently it's a book, it's what they call the Forbidden Bible, the Bible that's not canonical at the moment. And it details supposedly the life of Moses' dad and Enoch. And he, many years before, thousands of years before the works of Galileo, who described the solar system, in this book was described the solar system, our solar system. And this Book of Enoch details this man written obviously in a very old way of speaking. Of course, it had to be translated very meticulously, describing being taken up into the clouds by a glass chariot, and described what were the planets and the stars, and had a meeting with these beings. And I recommend anyone that reads it anyway. It takes a lot of effort to go through this, though, because, like I said, it's explained in a very old way, but it's worth the time. So basically, they discovered, essentially what were the scrolls that detailed this, and which became the Book of Enoch in the end. So I believe at some point they discovered something that alludes to our contact or the arrival of extraterrestrials then, and evidence of that. Of course, the church being back then, it goes against their narrative. So they went from being the golden boys, so to speak, to being the enemy. And that's where the whole Friday the 13th thing comes from, where Jacques de Molay, one of the Templar generals, was burnt at the stake along with his brothers. And he cursed that day, say this day will be forever cursed for this betrayal, and so on. I think it's a bit of an exaggerated story, though, that, the date itself is around then, not exactly the Friday, anyway. But they were discovered to be something kind of like a threat to the church, because they knew something that broke apart the narrative there. And that's where they went into hiding, and eventually re-emerged as the Freemasons. So with different presentations of sorts, but they were Freemasons for long enough for the church to no longer want to hunt them. But part of their whole thing, I theorize, again, I might be wrong about this anyway, but this is what I've learned around what I've been told, is that you're taught certain things and given certain kind of elements of information, which then allude and eventually would then reveal their knowledge and their protection of their knowledge of this contact. That's where I have a bit of a conflict, though, because I do believe in my heart of hearts that knowledge should be available to everyone. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Knowledge should always be the key. So give people knowledge and let them decide what to do with it. So again, I'm fully open to being wrong. I may be proved wrong, in the next episode, who knows, though. But I've always had this theory about it, though. So I kind of wonder what you think about that as well, and if you've heard a similar story.
I mean, I've certainly not read that particular book as such. It's an intriguing narrative that you've just said there. So they're effectively saying that you're gingerly given pieces of information as you go along. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, as you prove yourself with more trust. And like I said, I don't want to disrespect the organisation by saying anything that I've been told, like I say, but this is just my theory around what I've been told.
Yeah, I've not really got much more to say on that, to be honest with you. Yeah.
No, that's fine. No, I was just curious to see if you heard it before. Again, it's something I've heard a couple of other people say as well, coincidentally as well. They happen to have a similar thought train. So I have a feeling like it might be something, it might be nothing, I don't know. But either way, there is other evidence around there being contact for quite some time, talking thousands of years.
Yes. Well, it's something I'd really need to look at very, very deep to make an informed judgment. But it's the first time I've really heard of what you're saying, so I can't really make any judgments as such. That's my fair pause.
Okay. There's one thing I need to make sure that I ask you as well, because I know you've written a few books, basically, for anyone new to ufology or the kind of research that you're involved in, basically, where would you recommend anyone start with the books that you've written or books that you've read yourself by other people?
Well, certainly for my books, because I've written a number of books. I've written 12 books. One was about Nessie.
Wow.
One of the few guys in the world to have gone down in a submarine in Loch Ness. So I've written all about Nessie, the sightings through all the years, etc., up to present day, the underwater search for Nessie. I've written books on ghosts and poltergeists, one of which was the Sauchie Poltergeist, Scotland's biggest poltergeist case. And I live in Sauchie here just now. And other books about, ghost poltergeist, various cases and stuff like that. But clearly, for the young person coming to this scene for the first time or learning about these subjects, do please go to your local library and go to the UFO and Paranormal section. And if you can see any books by a number of British authors, but more importantly, Jenny Randalls, do certainly look out for books by Jenny Randalls. And just familiarise yourself, and be very thoughtful, because, as I say, there's some nonsense out there. But once you look at the validity of these cases, you'll soon be surprised that there is no smoke without fire. It's all about education. It's all about reading as much as you can and the different even the skeptic books. You've got to read some of these as well by James Randi and various other people, just to give you that balanced view. And I still read skeptical books as well, just to ensure that I'm doing my job correctly. But yeah, to answer your question, it's really just a case of, going to your local library, having a look at the books, and just taking it from there.
Can I ask you, Malcolm, haven't you got a wee magazine?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've just started our magazine from probably when we first started. It was around about 1989 to about, 1994, I guess. It was called Enigmas. And it was an A5 magazine, 40 pages, and it was done on a typewriter and letter set with the headings back in the day. Obviously, all computers and stuff. And we've reintroduced that on the internet and Billy Devlin is the editor of Enigmas. And basically it's just a vehicle with all our case histories and people's sightings. And it's early days. It's the very early days for its new incarnation, shall we say. But we hope it's going to, go to the heights that it did in the late 80s and early 90s. So I'm glad to get Enigmas, our society's journal, back out into the ether, for want of a better word.
And how can people get a hold of that, Malcolm? Because I want to have a look at it as well.
Yeah, same here.
Well, as I say, at the moment, it's just internet-based, so it's a PDF format it's in. But they can get a copy by emailing the editor, and this is the email address. It's Willie, that's Willy, Devlin, Devlin, 58 at gmail.com. And anybody who wants to get a copy of that, just send an email to Billy at that address.
So that's Willie Devlin. Is that all lowercase?
All lowercase, Christine. Aye. No spaces or anything. And
Willie Devlin 58.
58, yeah. At gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
So I'll add all the links in below the video as well, so people can easily click on that though. So you do all the books and that email contact too. Yeah, so I want to take a read actually. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that as well. Anybody that's watching this, start there. Go and have a look at it, see what it's saying, because I think the internet killed a lot of print media, didn't it? But for a little while, and it's good to have a copy of something to sit down with, a cup of coffee and a bag.
Yeah, being an author, you're absolutely correct, Christine. But being an author, I prefer to hold a book in my hand lying in bed at night as opposed to doing this with a Kindle and stuff like that.
We come from the old school. That's what it is, because we're all farts, you see.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's just the reason I write these books is not to make money, because you certainly don't make money out of them. It's purely to get the stories out. Purely to get the stories out. And as I say, myself and Ron Halliday have written a book about the UFO sightings over Bonnie Bridge. That should be out later this year, so do look out.
So is Bonnie Bridge a hotspot then, Malcolm?
Yes, it is. Aye, it's called a window area or a hotspot. It's a location which seems to attract a higher concentration of UFO reports than anywhere else. We have these areas throughout the world, like Gulf Breeze in Pensacola, the Nullarbor Plains in Australia, the Rosendale Valley, various places that seem to see a lot of UFO reports. And Bonnie Bridge is another one, yeah.
That's amazing. And I think we all have books now. I can't believe it, because I know Christine released I keep saying the Violet, it's a Violet Feather.
Yeah, Malcolm read it, didn't you, Malcolm?
It was a lovely book.
Yeah, did you like it?
Very inspirational, yes.
Thank you very much, guys.
I think you were saying it because you're on video, though, but
No,
I believe you.
I would say that if she was sitting in front of me.
No, it's a really nice book. I really enjoyed it, and I got a book. I'll send you a copy, Malcolm, if you'd like. Any more than you're more than welcome to say no, of course. So, but hopefully it'll be out later this year, because it was out on initial self-publication, but it's been taken on by a publisher now. But hopefully later this year I'll have Paranormality coming out, and
yes,
I detail like a really bizarre out-of-body experience which led to this demonic entity that followed me for many years, about like various other bizarre hauntings. And it's like I've lived a really, really weird life, and And yeah, anyone in the comment section is.
That makes
sorry,
three of us then. That makes three of us. We've all had weird
Yeah.
luck.
I'm intrigued
I
about.
just can't believe I can write.
I'm intrigued about your out-of-body experience. When you had this out-of-body experience, were you clearly conscious that, wait a minute, this isn't right, things are strange,
Yep.
what's going on? And you knew it wasn't a dream?
Yeah. I'll tell you in short really quickly, because I don't want to take too much of your time though. But I was involved in a car accident, and I'll send you a copy of the book anyway, just in text format if you'd like to read ahead though. But I at some point I died, basically. The best way to describe it though, and I was only like a little boy anyway, and I was in quite a bad way. But I knew my legs were completely wrecked, unusable, and suddenly I woke up, and I thought, okay, wasn't I awake a second ago? But my legs are moving. I can walk. I walked through the hospital, through like door to door, and tried to interact with different people and so on. But yeah, I ended up, long story short, contacting this entity at the end of this hallway, and this entity it was quite a scary experience. It was like an overload of information. Like I was taken all over the universe, down the road in Oxford, all over the place. And like I had this whole thing happen anyway, but eventually I woke up in my physical body and I was binded, like I couldn't move. But the weirdest thing was, just a few weeks later, when I was doing a lot better, this very kind nurse put me into a wheelchair and took me around the hospital. This was my first time at the hospital though, so obviously I hadn't been down the corridors. I knew exactly where to go, and I told the nurse where to go as if I'd been there before. And lo and behold, I then found that the room where I met the entity, and I just freaked out because it matched. So what initially like I could assume would be a dream, even though I felt I knew it was real though, but I wanted to believe it was a dream, then matched reality, and I had no other choice but to accept it. So that was my empirical evidence there. So that was the start of like a big long journey throughout my whole life though, which I put into a book in the end. So just to also say like, yes, it's scary. Like, there's a lot of stigma around these experiences, though, and it really did disturb me, quite frankly. Like, it took me many years to get over that. But now I'm just sharing these stories with other people to say it's okay to talk about these things. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed about these things, and you heal through having these conversations. So, yeah, I don't know whether I met death itself or some sort of entity, but it was something so powerful. I came back differently because my brain works differently now. Like, I'm not exactly a genius, I still call myself an idiot, but I have this like overload of information all the time, like coming out of me, and it takes like even me doing this podcast now. Like I used to speak so quickly, people just couldn't understand me. Like this podcast has kind of forced me to slow down and kind of be it. Christine's a very good speaker as well. I have to say though, so I'm trying to match her pace as well. So, like I said, it's like retraining the body to be able to communicate again. But through doing this, I'm able to access whatever I had downloaded all those years ago. So that's like the nutshell view. But yeah, so that book will be out hopefully later this year. And like I said, I'm not expecting to make much from it, though. It's just all about sharing the story. That's the whole point.
And I had a near-death experience at 11 when I got hit by a car.
That's amazing.
Street, and I knew I was out my body, Malcolm. It's a whole nother story. We haven't got time for it tonight, but it sparked something. And here I am at 68, still sitting here trying to find the truth.
Yeah,
I think you're on the way there.
I've never had a out-of-body experience myself. I'd like to.
They're fabulous, Malcolm.
I know. I mean, lucid dreaming is equal. I've had many lucid dreams.
All right. Right. Now, I had a lot of lucid dreams when I was a child, and there was a guy, and I remember we had the News of the World and all those big papers on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And he was doing some research, and I can't remember, he's still alive to this day. Oh, God, what was his name? It's just gone off my head. And, he was doing a lot of research then into lucid dreaming. I find them absolutely fascinating, lucid dreams.
Yeah, I think we should do an episode on that because it's like a dream. It's like a dream essentially where you have more control, isn't it? Some people can train themselves to be lucid dreamers.
I wrote to him and said I was having this lucid dream, and he wrote back really nice, and he says, next time you have one, I want you to go through a course of actions, and one was switching a light on and all this kind of stuff, which I did, and I filled in and sent it back to him, and I will find his name because it's out there. He's still alive. He's a very old man now, though. Yeah. So
incredible. Well, I suppose we'll just wrap it up there anyway. But thank you, Malcolm, for being here. It really means the world that you took the time to share. And I love your energy, and Christine too as well. It's always great having you with me.
Yeah, no, I only come along to see Malcolm. I didn't come along to see anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's your fan, your number one fan. I think you have here. So
it's the only fan I have. It's the only fan I have. It's been a pleasure to be on your show, Stan.
It's been great. It really has.
Christine,
I really appreciate it. No, thank you for
Christine. Thank you very much as well. And
your knowledge, Malcolm, will mean a lot to a lot of people anyway. So yeah, thank you.
No problem. Yeah. All the best.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a lovely evening. Take care. And
bye-bye.
Yeah.